They never really expect to lose you. Not really. Not the way that matters. See, when someone is used to holding power not just over situations, but over hearts, they don't believe anyone can walk away for good. Especially not someone who gave as much as you did, loved as deep, forgave as much, stayed as long. They count on that. They wear it like armor. But something they never understood is what happens when a person finally gets tired of being broken open just to prove they're worth keeping. That silence after you leave, that wasn't just distance. It was a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. This video isn't about giving a diagnosis. This isn't a lecture. It's a story, a truth. One that's lived quietly in the hearts of many people like you. The ones who carried too much, loved too hard, and left too late. But left still. It's about what really happens inside when someone who thought they owned your devotion realizes they lost real love. Not the kind that flatters, not the kind that feeds their image, but the kind that heals if held gently. The kind they never learned to receive without ruining it. It's about what the narcissist feels when it hits them, not just that you're gone, but that they can't get you back the way they always thought they could. You've probably wondered if they even feel anything at all. You've probably asked yourself, late at night, if it ever meant anything to them, if you were just another name on a list, or if maybe, just maybe, something inside cracked when you stopped coming back. This is for the part of you that wants closure. But more than that, for the part of you that deserves truth. Quiet truth. Honest truth. Without judgment or shame. Without drama. Just soul-deep reflection. Because here's what they'll never say out loud. It did mean something. Not in the way you hoped. Not in the way you needed. But in a way that shook them far more than they ever let on. If you've ever felt like your love disappeared into a black hole, if you've ever carried someone's emotional weight until your arms collapsed, if you've ever been punished for needing what you freely gave, then stay here with me. This isn't about blame. This is about understanding what your absence did to someone who never believed you'd leave. And why, sometimes, the most powerful healing isn't in seeing them apologize. It's in watching them face the one thing they always ran from, themselves. If you're new here, welcome. This space is built for people who feel deeply, love fully, and are learning to stop abandoning themselves to be chosen. Subscribe if that's you. Like this video if you've ever had to heal from being invisible to someone you would have done anything for. Take a breath. We're just getting started. They don't feel it right away. When you walk away, they may not flinch. They may not chase. They may even act like they're relieved, as if you were too much, too sensitive, too demanding. That's their way of avoiding the ache, the one they've been running from since long before they met you. But time has a cruel honesty, and it shows up in silence. Days pass, then weeks, and slowly something creeps in. Not regret, not at first, not the pure kind. It's more like discomfort, an itch they can't scratch, a tension in the chest they can't explain, because suddenly the echo sets in, the absence of your voice, the stillness where your care used to be. They scroll through their phone. The messages are there, your long texts, your soft check-ins, your apologies for things that weren't even your fault. But nothing new comes in, and it hits them. The attention they took for granted is gone, not moved, not replaced, gone. They reach out, not to say I miss you, but to test the waters. A meme, a hey, a question they could answer themselves. Just enough to see if the door's still cracked, and maybe, for a while it is. Because love doesn't shut off like a light. Especially not for people like you, the ones who believe that love means staying through the storm. But then the moment comes when you don't reply, or you do, and your warmth isn't there. And that's when something shifts. Not on the surface, they still wear the mask, the calm, the I'm fine. But deep down, it stings, because they didn't lose a supply. They didn't lose an admirer. They lost home, and not the kind built on walls or furniture. The kind built on safety, on knowing someone saw their darkness and still stayed. That rare kind of connection that feels like being known without having to earn it. For someone who's built their entire identity on being in control, that kind of loss is terrifying. They start to remember moments, not the big ones, the quiet ones. The way you used to touch their arm when they were overthinking, the way you remembered the little details they shared in passing, the way you made excuses for them when they disappointed you just so they wouldn't feel ashamed. They start to realize, no one else has done that. No one else has cared like that. No one else made them feel like they were more than their performance. But by now, you've stopped trying. You've stopped rescuing them from themselves. And this time, they're left to sit in the wreckage. That's when the denial begins to crack. That's when the questions creep in. Was I wrong? Did I ruin it? Did they really love me? But here's the truth they wrestle with in the quiet moments they don't show anyone. They know you did. They just didn't believe you'd ever stop. And now they're haunted by the realization that you were their chance at something real. The kind of love they never learned to hold. The kind that doesn't wait forever. And that knowledge, it doesn't destroy them at once. It haunts them slowly, piece by piece. Because the wound of losing real love isn't loud. It's quiet. But it stays. They start to wonder if you've already replaced them. If someone else gets your softness now, if someone else makes you laugh the way they used to when things were good back before the tension, the blame, the twisting of every honest feeling into an attack. They picture someone else holding what they never held properly, loving you without breaking you. And that thought, it cuts. Not because they suddenly believe they were wrong, at least not consciously. The ego doesn't surrender that easily, but because for the first time, they are no longer the center of your world. You've stopped orbiting, you've stopped explaining yourself, and without your light, the mirror reflects something ugly, something they never had to face before, the truth of their own emptiness. This is the moment they try to reframe the story. It's what they do best. They tell themselves you were overreacting, that you were never satisfied, that you expected too much. They talk to people, spin the narrative, anything to avoid the quiet verdict echoing in their chest. You left because they made love feel unsafe. And the more they repeat that to others, the more desperate it sounds, the more hollow. Because behind the mask of indifference is a growing hunger for what they didn't know they needed until it was gone. Emotional safety. They remember the way you used to sit quietly, just being with them when they had no words. They remember how your eyes never flinched when they showed you the darker parts only softened. They remember how, even in arguments, you never tried to destroy them. You just wanted to be understood. And slowly, painfully, a realization blooms inside them. You weren't trying to change them, you were trying to reach them, but they couldn't let you. Because reaching them would have meant being seen. And being seen truly would have exposed everything they buried. So they pushed you away. They made your needs feel like attacks. They made your love feel like pressure. Because to accept it would have required them to believe they were worthy of it. And that is the wound they've never healed. The one that whispers, you are not enough unless you're in control. But now, control means nothing because you're gone. And they're left in a room full of silence and missed chances. They might try to reach out again, this time with softness, with words that almost sound like accountability. But there's a difference between regret and responsibility. They may feel the pain of loss, but not enough to change, not enough to grow, because growth demands surrender. And surrender is the one thing they've never learned to do. So they sit with it. They wear your absence like a shadow, one that follows them into new relationships, one that makes every new person feel like a placeholder. Because deep down, they know no one else will love them the way you did. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present. And presence is something they only value in its absence. There's a moment not dramatic, not loud when it finally hits them. It could be as small as standing in a room where you once laughed, or hearing a song that used to play when things were still soft between you. Maybe they're walking home after a night out, and for the first time, no one's waiting. No message, no warmth on the other end of the silence. And something sharp stirs inside their chest. That's when the grief begins. But it's not the kind that breaks open and flows. No tears on the bathroom floor. No screaming at the sky. It's quieter, more paralyzing. It's the slow ache of knowing they killed something beautiful with their own hands and can't go back. They look at pictures, not the posed ones. The real ones, the candids. The ones where you're laughing or looking away, or resting your head on their shoulder like home lived there. They stare too long, try to feel something again, but all that's left is the echo, because what they lost wasn't just love. It was a chance to be chosen for who they really are, not who they pretend to be, a chance to stop performing, a chance to learn that being loved doesn't mean being worshipped, it means being met. And they failed, not in the way that makes people angry, in the way that leaves people numb. They might post something vague online, lyrics, quotes about losing a real one, trying to say what they don't have the courage to admit. I let go of someone who saw me and I didn't know what to do with that. They'll try to move on, they'll swipe, date, distract. They might even find someone new who gives them the same attention you once did, but it won't land the same, because now they're haunted by a comparison they'll never admit. You, the way you knew when something was wrong before they said a word, the way you forgave without making them grovel, the way your love didn't ask for perfection, just honesty. And no matter how much attention they get, it won't feel like yours, because it isn't. And now, they're left with the cruel truth. They weren't abandoned. They were released from the role you held space for so long, released from the chance to be truly known. And what's worse than being alone is realizing you were loved despite everything, and you still ruined it. They might tell themselves you'll come back. They might wait for it in small ways, watching your stories, holding on to old messages, rereading the last thing you said, hoping to find a way back in. But you you've changed. Not out of spite, not to prove anything. You just finally realized that your love deserves to land somewhere soft. And when that shift happens, when they feel you let go without needing them to see it, that's when they feel the weight of it all. Not because they lost you, but because they finally saw you and now it's too late. There's a peculiar cruelty in realizing the door is closed, and you were the one who slammed it without even knowing. For a long time, they believed love was a game of leverage. Who needed who more? Who could detach faster? Who could care less? But now, they understand something else entirely. Real love doesn't play by those rules. You weren't trying to win, you were trying to connect. And that difference? It's what sets you apart from anyone they'll ever meet again. Now they carry you in fragments. Not in a romantic way, in a haunting way. A persistent awareness that lingers like a scent in a room long after someone has gone. It's not obsession, it's recognition. That someone once offered them wholeness, and they turned it into survival. They may never speak it aloud. Maybe they can't, because to admit that would be to admit everything they pretended not to notice. How you would dim your joy so they wouldn't feel small. How you apologized first even when you were the one hurting. How you tried to translate your pain into language they could understand. And when they didn't, you blamed yourself. They remember that now, and they hate that they remember, because memory, when mixed with regret, is a slow kind of grief. One that unfolds not in the heart, but in the gut. And it doesn't leave. They start seeing you in other people, not really, but in traces. A laugh that's too close to yours, a phrase that reminds them of the way you spoke, but it never fits. It never holds. It only reminds them of what they let rot while they were busy guarding their ego, because what they lost wasn't just someone who loved them. They lost the mirror that showed them who they could have been, not the version built on image, charm, or dominance. The real one, the one that was scared, the one that longed to be held, to be enough without earning it. And you made space for that version. You saw it peeking through the cracks. You loved that one, but they were too afraid of what it would mean to be fully seen, so they buried it. And now they bury you with it. There's a bitterness that seeps in when you realize you were offered grace and chose pride instead. And now, when they lie awake some nights, they don't think about the arguments or the distance. They think about the look in your eyes the last time you gave up trying. The way your silence said everything your words never could. That's the image that burns, because it wasn't anger, it wasn't punishment, it was surrender. And nothing is heavier than being the reason someone gave up on believing they could be loved without breaking. They didn't lose a lover, they lost a lifeline. And maybe, someday, they'll grow enough to see it clearly, but by then, you'll be long gone. Not bitter, not broken, just elsewhere. In a space where your love isn't wasted on someone who mistakes tenderness for weakness. They keep the mask on. Even now, even with the pain quietly gnawing at them, they pretend. They smile in photos. They post like they're thriving. They laugh louder than they need to, hoping someone hears it and believes it. But behind all of it, there's a hollowness they can't fill, because you weren't just someone who loved them. You were someone who saw them, in all their chaos, in all their avoidance, in all their damage. And you didn't flinch. You leaned in. You gave them space to be more than what they performed for the world. And now, everything feels a little less real, because what's real without reflection? What's intimacy without safety? They talk about moving on, maybe even believe they have, but deep down, they know. What you gave them can't be replaced with new bodies or new stories. It wasn't about romance. It was about being known. You brought light into places they kept boarded up for years. You touched pain they didn't have the courage to name, and instead of recoiling, you stayed. Until you couldn't. Until staying meant betraying yourself. And now, that betrayal lives with them. Not yours, theirs. The betrayal of something sacred. They didn't just lose a partner. They lost the one person who could have helped them see that love doesn't have to mean control or fear or silence. They lost the chance to rewrite a story they didn't even know was broken. And now, every time they meet someone new, a quiet comparison creeps in. Not on purpose, but it's there. No one listens like you. No one loves like you. No one forgives like you. No one feels like you. They may not say it. They may never speak your name again. But you live in the space between their words. In the songs they skip. In the places they avoid because the memory is too sharp. They tell themselves you were too much. But now, everyone else feels like not enough. They start to understand too late that love isn't about who holds the power. It's about who holds the truth. And truth, it's messy. It's vulnerable. It exposes all the things they were taught to hide. You invited them into that space. They slammed the door. And now, they stand on the other side, staring at it, wondering what could have happened if they'd just opened it. Even a little. But that door doesn't open anymore, because you're no longer standing on the other side, waiting. You're building something new, something grounded, Something that doesn't require you to shrink to be accepted. Something that doesn't call your love too much, just because it asks to be held with care. And maybe, just maybe, that's what hurts them the most. That you healed without them. That your light didn't die when you left, it grew. And now, they don't just miss you. They miss the person they could have become if only they had known how to stay. They still won't admit it out loud. To anyone, not to their friends, not to their new partner, not even to themselves, not fully. Because to admit it would be to face the raw truth that you were real. And they let it slip through their hands while searching for control. So they hold the grief in strange ways. They re-watch old videos, not for nostalgia but for evidence, trying to see what they missed, trying to understand how someone so present, so loving, could become so distant, not realizing it wasn't sudden. It was slow. It was measured. It was survival. They go back in time in their mind, replay conversations, reread texts, analyze your silence like a puzzle, but you're not there anymore. Not in the way you were, because something changed. You stopped trying to earn love. You started reclaiming your worth. And that shift echoed through everything. You stopped being the one who held the thread between you both. And when they finally felt the thread break, they reached out, but their hands were empty. And that's when the shame set in. It doesn't scream, it doesn't rage. It just settles in the bones like winter. It's the shame of knowing that someone once stood in front of them with open arms, with a heart full of forgiveness, and they turned their back again and again, thinking that door would never close. But it did, not out of revenge, out of necessity. You didn't leave to teach them a lesson. You left because staying was costing you yourself. And now, on their better days, they'll think of you with softness. They'll wish they could tell you what they didn't know how to say back then, that they saw your light, that they felt your love, even if they couldn't hold it, that they wanted to be better, but didn't know how to step out of the armor. But they won't say it, they'll live with it. And that's the wound they'll carry, not because you hurt them, but because you didn't. You loved them, and they didn't know what to do with that. And you don't need revenge. You don't need a confession. You don't need them to suddenly become the version of themselves you always hoped for. Because you've grown. You've stopped waiting for closure from someone who couldn't even meet you halfway. You've written your own. So let this be the final chapter. Not for them. For you, a quiet ending to a loud pain. A release from the story that told you love had to come with suffering. You loved them. Fully. Fiercely, genuinely, and they'll remember that always, not because you haunt them, but because you healed from them. And that's what makes your love unforgettable. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched something in you, if it mirrored your heart in ways words usually can't, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing with someone who needs to hear it too. This space is for you, and you're not alone here.